Hi, I'm Michael Isikoff, Chief Investigative Correspondent for Yahoo News, and here's where things stand now in the Trump impeachment saga. It's been clear for 2 months now that President Trump wanted the Ukrainian President Zelensky to announce investigations of 2016 election interference, supposedly by the Ukrainians, and an investigation into the natural gas company upon which Hunter Biden was serving on its board. We've known that at that same time, the president had suspended military aid to the Ukrainians. So the question from the start was there a quid pro quo? Was the suspension of military aid tied to the demand by the president that there be investigations? One key Republican talking point all along has been that at the time of the phone call, the Ukrainians didn't know that their military aid was suspended. But we got some interesting new testimony from Laura Cooper this week, who was the senior Pentagon official overseeing this, saying that she started hearing from Ukrainians in the Ukrainian embassy in Washington as early as July 25th that there were concerns about the military aid. Cooper couldn't quite say explicitly what the Ukrainians were concerned about at that point. Did they know about the suspension? But that testimony alone does raise some questions about a very key Republican talking point. Now, Fiona Hill, who was the Ukraine expert and the National Security Council, gave some pretty significant testimony in which she went after Republicans for claiming that it wasn't the Russians who interfered in the 2016 election, it was the Ukrainians.
Based on questions and statements I've heard, some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves.
She overstated what the Republican talking points have been here, because the Republican-controlled House Intelligence Committee did conclude in its own report that it was, in fact, the Russians who did launch a state-sponsored attack on the election. But they've also said that the Ukrainians were also interfering in the election. They've cited a number of examples, an op-ed by the Ukrainian ambassador taking objections to the fact that then candidate Trump had suggested he would approve of the Russian annexation of Crimea, but nothing that rises to the order of what the Russians did, which was a state-sponsored attack by its security services. So to equate what the Russians did with what the Ukrainians did is clearly a false equivalence. One big question the Democrats have to resolve in the next few days is it worth having more testimony from other witnesses? Sondland said everyone was in the loop and pointed the finger at Vice President Pence, who he said he had mentioned the suspension of military aid to, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, White House Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. There's a temptation on the part of many Democrats to say we need to hear from those people. But if you do, that's going to prolong this, and I think there are a lot of Democrats who want to move this expeditiously, believing they've got an airtight case against the president right now. The Republican defenses have not held up well to the very compelling testimony that we've gotten from multiple witnesses. But at the end of the day, this is a political question. Does the evidence that was put on the table by the Democrats in these public hearings rise to the level of impeaching and removing the president from office in an election year when this matter will inevitably go to the Senate? And that's a question we don't really have the answer to. Where the American public is on this, I think how the polls look over the next couple of weeks is going to be key to what the ultimate outcome is.